Hello, my name is Kurt Clemenson. I'm the director of the Earth Foundation. This is the assistant director, Cynthia Everidge. We're filming today from the Moody Gardens in Galveston, Texas.
This facility is called the Rainforest Pyramid. It is a whole acre of rainforest under glass. It contains birds, fish, waterfalls, over 2,000 different species of plants from 3 different continents. And every day they release new tropical butterflies into the garden.
We'd like to offer our thanks to the Moody staff for the use of their pyramid. You know, it's facilities like this that are doing so much to increase the public concern and awareness of the destruction of tropical rainforests. I have been working and living in the rainforest for the past 20 years, ever since I went to Ghana, West Africa in 1973. And I must admit that for a long time I was very pessimistic about the future of these beautiful ecosystems. However, my attitude has changed considerably during the last 3 years. And I'm now convinced that if we work hard together, we can save much of what remains.
I agree with Kurt, and I believe the proof is found in the growth of the Rainforest Rescue Campaign and the amount of rainforest acres that we've already been able to save.
In fact, we would like to offer a big thank you to all the teachers, students, PTAs, and others that have helped us with the campaign. Because of you, we raised thousands of dollars for rainforest conservation.
We also donated $2,600 to the Ecosystem Survival Plan, which funded one of their meters for the Dallas Zoo. These renovated parking meters have a beautiful rainforest motif and collect thousands of dollars per year, every penny of which is used to save endangered species habitat in tropical countries. Our goal is to place 10 meters in zoos, aquariums, and other locations around the country. We will report back how much money is collected and which species it is helping to save.
And this year we will raise many times more. With the introduction of the Rainforest T-shirts, the program is exploding. And since the Earth Foundation receives grants from foundations, we are able to use most of the money raised to fund new and exciting projects. You can read about those in our newsletter. But for now, let's go on and focus on the land that you've helped us to protect.
When we began the Rainforest Rescue Campaign a few years ago, it was decided early on that students deserve more than just a certificate for their hard work. We would report back to our supporters every year where the money raised was invested. Well, this summer we went to Panama to explore an area down near the Colombian border called the Darien Gap. This was the site of this year's Adopt an Acre campaign.
Panama is located in Central America. This area served as a land bridge for migrating birds and mammals as the sea level fluctuated during millions of years of changing climatic conditions. The result was an area incredibly rich in biodiversity.
Many of you may be familiar with Costa Rica, Panama's next-door neighbor. As much as we love Costa Rica, I must admit that I came away even more excited about Panama. First of all, it only has half the population of Costa Rica, yet is actually a larger country. And while we always rave about the biodiversity of Costa Rica, I found that Panama is as diverse or even more so. In fact, they share many of the same species, including morpho butterflies, red-eyed tree frogs, sloths, and of course tarantulas.
But you can't talk about the Darien Gap Adopt an Acre program without first talking about the people involved. In March of 1992, the Nature Conservancy magazine had a long article about this young man, Juan Carlos Navarro. Born into a wealthy family, Juan Carlos was educated in the United States, first at Dartmouth, followed by a master's degree from Harvard University. His family assumed that he'd go into their business. First, though, he needed one last adventure and organized a 10-day expedition hiking across the Darien Gap from the Atlantic all the way to the Pacific. His companion and guide was an Imbara Indian guide. What Juan Carlos saw changed his life.
As they came across a large area of deforestation, he noticed that his guide began to cry. Committed to stopping the destruction, Juan Carlos went back to the city and announced to his family's disbelief that he was going to become an environmentalist. Beginning with a secretary in a small office in 1985, Juan Carlos formed ANCON, which is short for the National Association for the Conservation of Nature.
Well, 8 years later, ANCON has grown. With 140 people on staff, ranging from tropical biologists to park rangers, they acquired this 4-story office building to handle the workload.
You could say that Juan Carlos has been very busy. In fact, recently we went to Washington, D.C. and saw as ANCON was presented the Latin American Conservation of the Year Award. In fact, ANCON is just an incredible organization. Like the Earth Foundation, it is made up of energetic, dedicated young people who really believe they can make a difference. In fact, before we look at the Adopt an Acre project, let's take a look at some of the other activities that Ancon is pursuing in Panama.
This is an aerial view of part of a national marine park called Bocas del Toro. Ancon was instrumental in getting the park established.
They've also built an eco-educational facility that is used by both the local people as well as Americans. This summer, we'll take a number of students and teachers with us for a 14-day program that includes this area. This view is from the road, but you can also access the building by boat from the bay. In fact, when you get up in the morning, you can dive out the back door into the turquoise blue water. Since Bocas is an island, we used a boat from the Ancon Navy to travel about.
And so does everyone else. These are Waimea Indians who inhabit some of the nearby islands. This is a photo of Kurt at a reforestation project at the farthest island, Bocas del Drago.
Here is Ehelio, the Ancon area manager, with a sprouting bed used to start a number of native tree seedlings. Ancon is the largest tree planter in Panama, but we'll look at reforestation in greater detail when we visit the Adopt an Acre site in the Darien.
The Bocas area is very important to sea turtles who come ashore to lay their eggs on the island. While diving in the coral reef, we found it to be very healthy, unlike the Costa Rican reef a few hours up the coast, which is dying because of pesticide runoff from the banana plantations. This bat-filled cave was only minutes from the cabin. Like all rainforests, Panama's forests depend on bats for pollination and spreading seeds for new plants throughout the forest.
This is one of the Waimea Indian villages that I mentioned. We were very excited to see this in the local school. It's a poster celebrating National Ecology Week. We saw the same poster in schools from one end of the country to the other. Apparently, Ancon is getting the Save the Rainforest message out everywhere we went.
Like all relatively undisturbed rainforests, the Bocas area is full of wildlife. This monkey was a pet of the Waimea Indians that lived along the river.
From Bocas, we headed back to Panama City for the dedication of a new educational center at the Rio Chagres. I must admit that we are very impressed by this whole thing. First of all, some very important people are matching the money that you raise for the Adopt an Acre campaign. For example, here you see myself and Juan Carlos, but there's also the president for the Bank for International Development, which lends money to poor countries for development projects, many of which in the past actually destroyed rainforests, such as dams and highways. Ancon is trying to get the bank to loan money instead for earth-friendly projects like this center. There are also USAID and Nature Conservancy officials and some Ancon board members, including Don Fernando, who owns a lot of Panama's television stations.
With so many important people involved, it's no wonder Ancon grew so fast.
Well, it gets even better. Ancon is the 5th largest advertiser in Panama, all free. Public opinion polls show a 97% name recognition. That means that Ancon is as well known in Panama as Coca-Cola is in the United States. Which reminds me, one of the board members of Ancon owns the distribution of Coca-Cola in Panama. The educational center is only about an hour from the airport. It is located here in Soberanía National Park. The park runs along the west side of the Panama Canal and is critical in preventing erosion of the soil, which in turn prevents the siltation of the canal. This canal is vital to U.S. exports and our economy.
So without the rainforest, the Panama Canal would fill with mud?
Exactly.
Wow. Ancon is doing some other innovative projects in this area. For example, many peasants cut down the rainforest to raise cattle, even though they only make $7 per acre per year.
Ancon realized that they could teach people to raise iguanas, which taste like chicken and are considered a delicacy by the local people. The farmers make $200 an acre this way, 30 times more than if they were raising cows. So Ancon now raises over 4,000 iguanas for distribution. Local farmers release them into the rainforest and come back to harvest them when they are grown. They make more money and save the rainforest at the same time.
They also have huge areas that they are reforesting with native species. The largest tree planter in Panama, this is one of Ancon's tree seedling farms. They also have a program to establish or demarcate the edge of the park in order to keep trespassers, especially poachers, out of the park.
And the center itself is absolutely beautiful.
What a cool place to study about the rainforest. It sure beats some of the places we've stayed in the past.
And of course, by now, Juan Carlos and Ancon have really impressed us. But it gets even better. We'd indicated a desire to visit Barro Colorado Island.
In 1919, when the Panama Canal was dredged, the water rose and it formed an island known as Barro Colorado. And in 1924, a scientist from the Smithsonian Institute in Washington, D.C. realized that this island would make an excellent place for tropical rainforest research.
So Juan Carlos asked these two Ancon staffers to give me a one-day tour of the island. It was really neat because Graciela, on the right, is a tropical biologist and spent 2 years doing research on the island. Not only that, the boat only goes out once a week with visitors, and there's a 2-year waiting list. I guess I was really lucky.
You mean it helps to have connections?
Really, Juan Carlos seems to know everybody. So here we are approaching the island. It kind of reminded me of the old King Kong movie. I just kept waiting for this giant ape to appear. This harmless vine snake greeted us at the door. Again, we shot a lot of great pictures. Howler monkeys 10 feet overhead. This tree was filled with water and thumped loudly like a ripe watermelon when you wrapped it with your hand.
Who are these guys?
These are the park rangers who are headed out on night patrol to prevent poaching of wildlife. You can see that they are well armed because of the danger from the poachers. Ancon provides the uniforms, radios, boats, etc. Without Ancon, there would be no patrolling.
Does any of the money that the students raise go towards helping the park rangers?
Well, indirectly. Remember that the money that we raise through the Adopt an Acre campaign is matched by funds from the Parks and Peril program. Some of those funds actually go for ranger uniforms, boats, even some of their salaries. Now, the next morning, we got up early. Myself, Juan Carlos, and Rick Halpern from the Nature Conservancy, and we took off for the Darien to visit the Adopt an Acre site. The Darien is a large area of old-growth rainforest that borders Colombia. 1.5 million acres have been set aside as a national park. Of course, leaving Panama City was neat. You could see the ships lined up to go through the canal. But for a long while along the coast, there was nothing but pasture lands and agricultural fields. Now remember, this was a single-engine plane flown by a bush pilot who'd been flying since I was still in diapers. You can't imagine what a thrill it is skimming the top of the canopy. We even saw a very rare harpy eagle off the wing. For quite a while there was some slash and burn, but soon we were over large vistas of virgin rainforest.
Wow, what a view.
Yeah, finally after about 3 hours of flying, we reached our destination, these mountains which were covered by rainforest. Here we are landing on a short grassy field next to Cana, an old gold mine. 70 years ago, this place had 10,000 men working in about 60 mining tunnels.
10,000 men? It must have been a small city.
It was. They even had a train service in this area. That's Rick Halpern standing next to the old locomotive, or what's left of it. I poked my head in and a bat flew out. The camp was abandoned years ago when the mine played out, and during the past few decades, the rainforest has grown back with a vengeance.
Well, if it's so remote, why did it need to be protected?
Well, that's a good question, Cynthia. A few years ago, the big international mining companies began to re-explore. They were actually talking about putting a huge cyanide leaching pit in this area.
Cyanide? Isn't that a deadly poison?
It is, but cyanide also dissolves the rock holding the gold. The mining company's idea was to come back in and reprocess these old piles of ore and extract all the gold.
But what would that do to the rainforest?
Well, it would have destroyed it, obviously. And unfortunately, leakage from that cyanide pit would have poisoned the water table, the lakes, the rivers, etc. for miles. So Ancon bought the Panamanian company and canceled the mining concession. In fact, the Adopt an Acre campaign is paying for the land, the thousands of acres of rainforest that surround Cana. I've traveled all over the world, but I've never experienced bird watching like this. Within our first 15 minutes, we'd seen 4 species of macaws circling the camp, toucans, crested guan, giant woodpeckers, plus over 400 other species call this place home. It was really difficult to get any work done. About every 5 minutes, someone would call us out of our cabin to view the wildlife. These members of the Audubon Society flew in for some bird watching and were absolutely thrilled with the number of species. I should add that many of our neotropical migrants depend on this area.
Remember, neotropical migrants include the songbirds in the United States who winter over in the rainforest. Their numbers are crashing as the rainforest is destroyed. If we are going to save the birds, we must save the rainforest.
Finally, it was time to head out to Punta Patiña to see our acreage. Punta Patiña is 65,000 acres and will act, first of all, as a buffer zone to protect encroachment on the unprotected national park. But with 60% forest cover, is an important ecosystem also. One of the reasons that we must protect Punta Patiña is that it has a large special kind of rainforest called a mangrove forest near the beach.
The roots of the trees are covered with salt water at high tide every day and serve as an important nursery for fish, oysters, crabs, etc.
I should add that the Earth Foundation is currently working on a curriculum on mangroves and fisheries. There's also a large grove of coconut palms planted many years ago. When the scientists came in to do a rapid biological assessment...
Hold it, we better explain a rapid biological assessment. When an area is threatened and it is believed to have significant biodiversity, a small group of scientists go in to quickly inventory the animals, birds, plants, and insects to see if it is worthy of preservation.
The scientists were ecstatic to realize that this is the largest stand of disease-resistant coconut trees on the Pacific coast of Panama. A disease has been wiping out palm trees all over Central America and the Caribbean. Ancon plans to provide seedlings to the countries that are losing their coconut palms to the disease. This will also provide another source of income to the local people.
As Kurt said, Ancon is the largest tree planter in Panama. Here you see beds filled with teak, laurel, cedro, and other rainforest hardwood trees. Some of these are natives and others are not. Here, for example, is a teak tree, which is native to Southeast Asia. Teak is a fast-growing tree and will help stabilize the soil and provide shelter for wildlife. Once it matures, it can be sustainably harvested since it regenerates from the tree stump. This will also provide an income for the local people and take pressure off the national parks.
Ancon has brought Imbara, Guaymi, Cuna, and other indigenous people from all over Panama to learn about agroforestry. Agroforestry is simply a way for people to raise trees and crops for both food and income. This young man is an Imbara Indian. Those are rainforest tree seedlings that he is about to transplant to beds located behind him. He will eventually return to his village and share the knowledge with his people about how to use the forest without destroying it.
Wow. Ancon is such an inspiration, not only for the people of Panama, but also for the students, teachers, and Earth Foundation staff working so hard to save the rainforests.
And as we've said, Panama is an unbelievably beautiful country. From ants to plants, from indigenous people to the Panama Canal, and last but not least, the rainforest with all that it contains. This area is certainly worth preserving. The Earth Foundation is committed to raising at least $150,000 this year for the Adopt an Acre campaign. That money will be matched by the Parks and Peril program up to $350,000.
Not only will we be protecting nature, we will be protecting a way of life that has not changed for thousands of years.
We, of course, will be working on a number of innovative projects like our zoo parking meters. We'll be helping the indigenous tribes of Ecuador and Brazil. Of course, our letter writing campaigns will continue. And we've got some really exciting projects on the drawing board to further protect biodiversity and endangered species like tigers and wolves. In fact, you can read all about it in our next newsletter.
We've got a lot of work to do. We better get busy. Thanks again to all the folks who have participated in our past efforts, and welcome to our new friends who will be joining the Earth Network this year. We look forward to sending you our newsletter and keeping you informed of the Rainforest Rescue Campaign.
And I look forward to the day when the destruction of these beautiful, important places has been completely stopped.
Remember, if we are to save the rainforest and the rest of our environment, it is only because you decide to do something about it.